The coffee had gone cold an hour ago, but Sarah hadn't noticed. She sat in the corner booth of the diner, her hands wrapped around the ceramic mug as if it were the only thing keeping her tethered to the world. Tears traced silent paths down her cheeks, dropping onto the checkered tablecloth where they bloomed into dark, irregular flowers. She didn't bother wiping them away anymore. What was the point? Her marriage was over, her mother's cancer had returned, and the eviction notice in her purse felt like it weighed 1,000 pounds. At 34 years old, Sarah Mitchell felt like her life had shattered into so many pieces that putting it back together seemed impossible. The Tuesday afternoon crowd had thinned to almost nothing. A trucker sat at the counter nursing black coffee. An elderly couple shared a slice of pie by the window. And then there was the little boy, maybe 5 years old, with wild brown curls and a grass-stained shirt, sitting 3 booths away with his father. Sarah had barely registered their presence until she heard the soft patter of small feet approaching her table. She looked up through blurred vision to find the child standing beside her booth, his head tilted to one side, studying her with the kind of unguarded curiosity that only children possess. In his small hands, he clutched a worn stuffed rabbit with one ear hanging by a thread. "Please don't cry, miss," he said, his voice gentle but certain. "Daddy fixes broken things." Sarah blinked, momentarily startled out of her spiral of despair. She opened her mouth to respond, but no words came. The boy turned and called out, "Daddy. This lady is sad. Can you fix it?" From the booth where he'd been sitting, a man looked up. He appeared to be in his late 30s, with kind eyes that crinkled at the corners and hands that looked like they'd known hard work. He seemed embarrassed by his son's declaration, but he stood anyway, walking over with an apologetic smile. "I'm so sorry," he said, placing a gentle hand on his son's shoulder. "Tommy here thinks I can fix anything. Come on, buddy, let's leave the nice lady alone." But Tommy didn't budge. He held up his stuffed rabbit. "Daddy fixed Mr. Hopper's when his ear came off. And he fixed my bike when the chain broke. And he fixed the bathroom sink that was making that loud noise. He's really good at fixing things." Despite everything, Sarah felt the smallest crack appear in the wall of her despair, and through it came something she hadn't felt in weeks, the faint warmth of a smile. "It's okay," she heard herself say, her voice rough from crying. She looked at the father. "He's sweet." The man, who introduced himself as David Chen, didn't leave. Instead, with Tommy's insistent tugging, he slid into the booth across from Sarah. It was the kind of thing that should have felt intrusive, that would have sent her walls up on any other day. But today, sitting in that diner with her world in ruins, somehow it felt like exactly what she needed. "Tommy's mother passed away 2 years ago," David said quietly, watching his son color on a paper placemat with crayons the waitress had brought. "Since then, he's developed this theory that everything can be fixed if you just try hard enough. I taught him basic repairs around the house to give us something to do together, and now he thinks his old man is some kind of miracle worker." Sarah felt her throat tighten. "I'm so sorry for your loss." David nodded, his eyes holding the kind of understanding that only comes from walking through your own valley of shadows. "The first year, I cried almost every day. Tommy would bring me his broken toys, one after another, asking me to fix them. I think he was really asking me to fix myself, to fix our family. Kids are smarter than we give them credit for." Tommy looked up from his coloring. "Mommy's in heaven, but Daddy says she still loves me from there. That's not broken, it's just different now." The wisdom of it, coming from such a small person, broke something loose in Sarah's chest. She found herself telling them everything. About Michael, her husband of 7 years, who'd left 3 months ago for a woman he'd met at work. About her mother's stage 4 diagnosis. About losing her job as an elementary school teacher due to budget cuts. About the eviction notice and the fact that she had exactly $17 in her checking account. David listened without interruption, without judgment, without offering the empty platitudes she'd heard from everyone else. When she finished, he was quiet for a moment, then said, "I'm a contractor. Lost my business after my wife died. Couldn't keep up with the work and taking care of Tommy. But I've been slowly building it back up. I could use someone to help with the administrative side. Answering phones, scheduling jobs, basic bookkeeping. It doesn't pay much to start, but it's something." Sarah stared at him. "You don't even know me. I know you're sitting here crying in a diner instead of giving up entirely." I know you loved your job teaching kids. I know you're fighting to take care of your mom. He paused. And I know my son has good instincts about people. He doesn't talk to just anyone. Over the next 3 months, Sarah discovered that David Chen was a man of his word. The job was real, and though the pay was modest, it was enough to find a small apartment and start rebuilding. She threw herself into the work, learning the contracting business from the ground up. David taught her how to read blueprints, how to estimate materials, how to talk to suppliers and clients. In return, she brought organization to his chaos, implementing systems that helped him take on more jobs. But more than the job, David and Tommy gave her something she'd forgotten she needed, a reason to show up. Tommy would wait for her arrival each morning with drawings he'd made the night before. David would have coffee ready, made exactly the way she liked it after the first week when he'd paid attention to how she ordered it at the diner. Sarah started visiting her mother more regularly, no longer weighed down by the shame of failure. She had hope now, something to tell her mother about during their conversations. Her mother, weak but fighting, would smile and say she always knew Sarah was stronger than she thought. One afternoon in early spring, Sarah arrived at the office to find Tommy crying over his stuffed rabbit. Mr. Hopper's other ear had finally given up the ghost, and Tommy was inconsolable. I don't think even Daddy can fix it this time, he sobbed. Sarah knelt down beside him. She thought about all the unfixable things in her own life, her failed marriage, her mother's illness, the time she'd lost. Then she thought about all the things that had been mended, her financial situation, her sense of purpose, the hope she'd rediscovered. You know what, Tommy? Sometimes things can't go back to exactly how they were. But that doesn't mean they can't be good again in a different way. She took the rabbit gently. How about we turn Mr. Hoppers into Mr. Floppers, a rabbit who's special because his ears are different. She spent her lunch break at a craft store, returning with fabric, stuffing, and supplies. Together, she and Tommy transformed Mr. Hoppers. They couldn't save the ears, so they created new ones, one standing up, one flopping down, making him unique, giving his wear and tear a story instead of hiding it. When David saw what they'd done, he had tears in his eyes. You're good for us, he said quietly. Both of us. Sarah realized then that she'd been so focused on what had broken in her life that she hadn't noticed what was being built. This makeshift family in a contractor's office. The little boy who greeted her with hugs. The man who looked at her not with pity but with respect and something deeper she was just beginning to recognize. Please don't cry, miss. Daddy fixes broken things, Tommy had said that day in the diner. He'd been right, Sarah thought, but not in the way he'd meant. David hadn't fixed her, she'd done that work herself. But he'd given her the space and support to heal. He'd shown her that broken things could become beautiful in new ways. That sometimes the cracks in our lives let the light in. And standing there in that cluttered office, holding a lopsided stuffed rabbit while a 5-year-old beamed with pride and his father smiled at her with warmth that felt like coming home, Sarah understood something profound. We don't need someone to fix us. We need someone to believe that we're worth fixing ourselves, and to stand beside us while we do the hard work of putting the pieces back together. Sometimes the most broken things create the most beautiful mosaics. You just have to be willing to see the pattern emerging from the shards.